A trembling black child stands before a towering mansion gate in pouring rain, clutching math worksheets. Inside, Victoria Wellington stares in disbelief at security footage, her daughter Penelope beside him. "He taught you what?" The boy disappears into darkness. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to never miss another life-changing story like this one. Now, prepare yourself for a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about privilege, genius, and what it truly means to see someone for who they really are. Victoria Blackwood stepped out onto the balcony of her San Francisco mansion, coffee in hand, surveying the sprawling estate that had become both her sanctuary and her prison since her husband Jonathan's sudden death 2 years ago. At 38, Victoria had become one of the most powerful women in tech. Her company BlackTech valued at over $7 billion. But the weight of balancing her role as CEO with raising 8-year-old Lily often left her feeling inadequate on both fronts. The morning breeze carried the scent of expensive roses as Victoria checked her watch. Another board meeting in 30 minutes meant she would miss Lily's breakfast again. She made a mental note to compensate with an extra special weekend, perhaps the Bahamas this time, as her assistant Miranda appeared at the doorway with an urgent update about quarterly projections. Later that afternoon, Victoria was surprised when Mrs. Chen, Lily's private tutor, mentioned how remarkably Lily's math skills had improved. "She's grasping concepts well beyond her grade level now, Mrs. Blackwood." "Whatever you're doing at home is working wonders," Mrs. Chen said, with genuine admiration. Victoria nodded and smiled, not wanting to admit she had barely had time to review Lily's homework in weeks. That evening, while working through acquisition paperwork in her home office, Victoria noticed Lily sneaking down the hallway with napkins wrapped around something. Curious and slightly concerned, Victoria followed at a distance, watching as her daughter slipped through the side garden door. Through the security cameras, Victoria tracked Lily's path to a secluded corner of the estate near the ornamental pond, a spot not visible from the main house. The following afternoon, Victoria postponed her meetings and followed Lily's now familiar route through the garden. She stayed hidden behind a large topiary as she watched her daughter approach a small figure sitting cross-legged on the ground. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. It was a young black boy, perhaps Lily's age, wearing clothes so tattered they barely deserved the name. Despite his appearance, the boy spoke with remarkable clarity as he drew diagrams in the dirt with a stick. "You see, Lily, when you're multiplying fractions, you just multiply the top numbers together and the bottom numbers together. But when you're adding, you need a common denominator first." Victoria watched in astonishment as this homeless child expertly guided her daughter through mathematical concepts that Victoria herself had struggled with in college. Lily nodded eagerly, working through problems in a notebook while the boy patiently corrected her work. After 20 minutes, Lily unwrapped the napkins she'd brought, revealing sandwiches and cookies that the boy accepted with careful dignity, eating slowly as if to make the food last. Victoria couldn't contain herself any longer and stepped into the clearing. Both children froze, the boy immediately scrambling to his feet with terror in his eyes. "Mommy," Lily exclaimed, "this is Marcus. He's my friend. He's super smart and helps me with math." The boy, Marcus, looked ready to bolt his thin frame tense like a cornered animal. "He's the only reason I'm passing math, Mom. Please don't be mad. I know we're not supposed to have strangers on the property, but Marcus is really good at explaining things." Mrs. Chen goes too fast. Before Victoria could respond, the estate security team rounded the corner, alerted by the property's motion sensors. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" asked the head guard, Frank, his hand instinctively moving toward his taser as he assessed Marcus. "We detected an unauthorized person on the grounds." Marcus backed away, his eyes darting between Victoria, the guards, and the fence beyond. Victoria noticed details she had missed before. The boy's shoes were held together with duct tape, his arms painfully thin, his eyes showing a wariness no child should possess. But there was something else there, too. Intelligence, pride, and a quiet dignity that struck her. "It's fine, Frank," Victoria started, but hesitated as she considered the complications of the situation. While she processed what to do, Frank stepped forward. "Young man, this is private property. You need to leave immediately. He's not hurting anyone." Lily protested, tears forming. "He's just helping me with math." Marcus gathered his few belongings, a tattered backpack and some dog-eared textbooks. "I'm sorry for trespassing, ma'am," he said softly, his voice surprisingly articulate. "I meant no harm." Victoria felt an uncomfortable pang as Frank escorted the boy to the gate. Lily turned accusatory eyes on her mother. "Why did you let them make him leave? He's my friend. He's the smartest person I know." Later that night, Victoria found herself examining a notebook Marcus had left behind in his hasty departure. Her eyes widened as she flipped through pages of complex equations and elegant mathematical proofs, work that went far beyond elementary or even middle school level. In the margins were neat notes. "Show Lily how to visualize the problem. She learns best with pictures." Victoria sat back, troubled by the evidence of extraordinary intelligence in a child society had completely overlooked. The image of Marcus haunted Victoria for days. Those intelligent eyes, the careful way he spoke, the remarkable mathematical talent evident in his forgotten notebook. She found herself distracted during important meetings, her mind drifting to the boy who had been teaching her daughter. "Something on your mind, Victoria," her CFO, asked after she lost track of the conversation for the third time during their executive briefing. Making a sudden decision, Victoria called in Thomas, the head of her private security team. "I need you to find someone," she said, sliding over a description of Marcus and the approximate location where he'd been seen. "A child. Is there a problem?" Mrs. Blackwood Thomas asked, raising an eyebrow. "No problem. I just need to locate him. Discreetly." The search proved more difficult than Victoria anticipated. The private investigators reported that Marcus was essentially a ghost in the system. No permanent address, no school enrollment, occasional appearances at community soup kitchens. Bits and pieces of information emerged orphaned at age 4. When his mother died of treatable cancer, she couldn't afford to have diagnosed, bounced between foster homes until he slipped through the cracks entirely after his last placement turned out to be abusive. Self-taught through books discarded by the public library. Occasionally slept in a homeless encampment beneath the Jefferson Street overpass. When Victoria shared her interest in finding Marcus with her executive team, their reactions ranged from confusion to thinly veiled disapproval. "This sounds like a PR disaster waiting to happen," said her marketing director bluntly. "A billionaire tech CEO associating with homeless people. The optics are terrible." "I'm not looking for a photo op," Victoria snapped. "I'm concerned about a gifted child living on the streets." Her research department uncovered something that made Victoria's stomach turn. BlackTech's newest development project had displaced an affordable housing complex 3 years ago, the very neighborhood where Marcus had once lived, with a foster family. The realization that her company's actions had potentially contributed to the boy's homelessness left her feeling physically ill. Determined to find him, Victoria decided to visit the Jefferson Street encampment herself, ignoring her security team's strong objections. Dressed in jeans and a plain sweater, she drove herself to the area in an inconspicuous car. The contrast between the encampment and her gated estate was stark and jarring. Tents and makeshift shelters stretched beneath the overpass, the smell of unwashed bodies and desperation hanging in the air. People eyed her cautiously as she walked through, immediately recognizing her as an outsider despite her casual clothes. Victoria asked about Marcus, describing him to anyone who would listen. An older woman with kind eyes finally nodded. The little professor, "Yeah, he comes around sometimes. Smart as anything. Helps me count my medicine." She pointed toward the public library 6 blocks away. "He spends most days there when they let him in." As Victoria walked back to her car, she noticed 2 police officers confronting a black teenager, their tone aggressive, as they demanded identification. When they spotted Victoria watching, one approached her. "Ma'am, you shouldn't be in this area. It's not safe for someone like you." The implication was clear: someone white, someone wealthy. "I'm fine, thank you," Victoria replied coldly, pulling out her business card. "Victoria Blackwood, CEO of BlackTech. I'm here on business." The officer's demeanor changed instantly, becoming deferential. "My apologies, Miss Blackwood. Can we escort you to your vehicle?" Victoria declined watching as they returned to harassing the teenager. The incident gave her uncomfortable insight into Marcus's daily reality. He had no business card to flash, no privilege to shield him from suspicion and harassment. She continued her search, heading toward the library. Outside the building, she spotted a group of older boys surrounding someone smaller. Drawing closer, she recognized Marcus clutching a book to his chest as the others taunted him. "Think you're so smart with your fancy math, don't you?" One boy jeered, shoving Marcus against the wall. Trying to act white with those books, Victoria stepped forward. "Hey, leave him alone." The boys scattered at the adult intervention, but Marcus used the distraction to slip away as well, disappearing down an alley before Victoria could catch up. Frustrated but determined, Victoria returned to the encampment with food and warm clothing, distributing them while continuing to ask about Marcus. The residents were initially suspicious, but gradually warmed to her as they realized she wasn't there for publicity or quick charity. "That boy's special," said an elderly man, who introduced himself as Walter. "Helped me fill out my veterans benefits forms when my eyes got too bad to read the small print. Kid's got a gift. Shame the world don't see it." Victoria's perspective was shifting dramatically with each hour she spent in Marcus's world. The systematic barriers, the casual cruelty, the assumptions and prejudices that shaped his daily existence, all of it was a reality she had been insulated from in her privileged life. She returned home late that evening, more determined than ever to find Marcus and somehow help him access the opportunities his brilliance deserved. Victoria arrived at the Jefferson Street encampment early the next morning, her car trunk filled with food, blankets, and basic necessities. As she distributed supplies, she continued asking about Marcus, her concern growing as a storm system was forecasted for later that week. "That little man helped my granddaughter with her schoolwork," an older woman told Victoria, as she gratefully accepted a bag of groceries. "He's got the patience of a saint and a mind like Einstein." "System failed that child. Something terrible." Victoria nodded, her throat tight. "Do you know where I might find him today?" The woman pointed toward the public library again. "Opens at 10. He'll be first in line, always is. Gets himself cleaned up in the gas station bathroom so they won't turn him away." Victoria thanked her and was turning to leave when her phone rang, her mother calling for their weekly check-in. Victoria hesitated but answered. "Victoria, darling, are you coming to the club fundraiser this weekend? The Prescotts are hosting, and everyone's asking about you." "I don't think so, Mother. I'm in the middle of something important right now. More important than maintaining your social connections." "Really, Victoria, since Jonathan passed, you've become practically reclusive. It's not healthy." Victoria sighed, watching as a young homeless woman carefully divided a sandwich to share with her child. "I'm reassessing some priorities, Mother. I'll call you later." As Victoria walked toward her car, a voice called out behind her, "Miss Blackwood." She turned to find Walter, the veteran she'd met yesterday, hurrying toward her with surprising speed for his age. "About the boy, be careful how you help him. Sometimes, well-meaning white folks do more harm than good, thinking they know what's best without understanding." The comment stung, but Victoria recognized the wisdom in it. "I appreciate that, Walter. I'm trying to listen and learn." He nodded approvingly. "That's a start. Most folks like you don't even do that much." The next few days brought a series of uncomfortable confrontations as Victoria pursued her search for Marcus. At a charity board meeting, her friend Caroline reacted with alarm when Victoria mentioned her visits to the encampment. "You went there alone, Victoria. That's insane. Those people could be dangerous." "Those people," Victoria repeated slowly, "are human beings who've been failed by the same system that's protected and privileged us our entire lives." Caroline's expression shifted from concern to discomfort. "Well, yes, of course, but still, isn't this something you could delegate? Make a donation to a proper organization instead of getting personally involved." At home, Lily continued asking about Marcus, drawing pictures of them, working on math problems together. "Will Marcus come back, Mommy? I miss him." When Victoria explained that she was trying to find him, Lily hugged her tightly. "He told me nobody ever looked for him before." The comment broke Victoria's heart. During an executive meeting, Victoria found herself challenging her board's hiring policies after noticing the stark lack of diversity in their upper management. "Our workforce statistics are abysmal," she said bluntly, displaying a graph that showed predominantly white males in leadership positions. "We need to address the systemic barriers in our recruitment and promotion processes." Harold Fisher, her longest-serving board member, shifted uncomfortably. "Victoria, we hire based on merit. If certain candidates aren't meeting our standards seem remarkably good at excluding qualified candidates of color," Victoria interrupted. "I want a complete overhaul of our hiring practices by next quarter." Later in private, Harold confronted her. "Is this about that homeless boy your security team mentioned? Victoria, your personal charity projects shouldn't influence company policy." Victoria felt a flash of anger. "This isn't charity, Harold. It's justice. And yes, meeting Marcus has opened my eyes to biases I was privileged enough to ignore before." Finally, 9 days after she began her search, Victoria stationed herself outside the public library before opening. Sure enough, Marcus was the first in line, his clothes cleaner than she'd seen before, but still woefully inadequate, his backpack clutched protectively against his chest. When he spotted Victoria, his body tensed, ready to flee again. "Marcus," she called, gently staying where she was to avoid frightening him. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to talk." His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why?" "Because you're extraordinary," she said simply. "And because Lily misses you." A flicker of something, hope perhaps, crossed his face before disappearing behind careful neutrality. "I shouldn't have been on your property. I won't come back." "That's not," Victoria began, but the library doors opened and Marcus quickly slipped inside. Victoria followed, watching as he greeted the librarian with quiet politeness before heading to the mathematics section. The librarian noticed Victoria's interest. "Are you Marcus's mother?" she asked, hopefully. Victoria shook her head. "No, just a friend." The librarian's face fell slightly. "That child is brilliant, truly exceptional. I've been letting him stay past closing sometimes to finish his studies. He's teaching himself calculus, can you believe it?" At 8 years old, Victoria felt her heart constrict. "Has anyone from social services been involved? Tried to get him proper housing education?" The librarian's expression hardened. "I've called them 3 times. They're looking into it. Meanwhile, that child sleeps under bridges." Victoria spent the day observing Marcus from a distance. She noticed how the security guard followed him suspiciously, while ignoring the white children who were being far more disruptive. How the other patrons pulled their belongings closer when he walked by. How, despite it all, he maintained a dignity and focus well beyond his years. Just before closing time, Victoria approached him again. "Marcus, would you consider coming back to tutor Lily? She's really struggling without your help. I would pay you, of course." He looked up from his book, suspicious. "Why would you want someone like me around your daughter?" The question hit Victoria like a physical blow. What had the world taught this brilliant child about his worth? "Because you're the best teacher she's ever had," Victoria answered honestly. "And because everyone deserves a chance to share their gifts." He studied her face for a long moment, before giving a slight nod. "I don't want your money. But Lily should learn fractions properly." It was a small victory, but Victoria felt like she'd won a marathon. How many people have encountered discrimination but were too afraid to speak up? Type 1 in the comments if you've ever witnessed prejudice and felt powerless to stop it. Hit the like button if you believe everyone deserves a fair chance regardless of their background. Subscribe to see how Victoria continues fighting for justice in this incredible story. What would you do if you discovered someone with extraordinary talent being overlooked because of their race or circumstances? Is Victoria making the right choice by getting personally involved, or is she overstepping boundaries? The storm, clouds of confrontation are gathering. Will Victoria's privilege protect her from what's coming next? 3 days later, Marcus arrived at Victoria's estate for his first official tutoring session with Lily. Victoria had arranged for her driver to pick him up from the library, but Marcus had declined, preferring to walk the 4 miles himself. He stood at the gate, clean but still, in his worn clothes, shoulders squared with dignity despite the obvious intimidation of the massive estate. Victoria greeted him personally, leading him to a sunny room she had set up with textbooks, notebooks, and a whiteboard. Lily's delighted squeal when she saw Marcus brought the first genuine smile Victoria had seen on his face. "You came back," Lily exclaimed, immediately pulling out her math homework. "I tried to solve these like you showed me, but I got stuck on number 7. As the children worked, Victoria observed from the doorway, amazed at Marcus's natural teaching ability. He never gave Lily the answers, instead asking questions that guided her to discover solutions herself. "Math isn't about memorizing," he explained patiently. "It's about understanding patterns. See how this connects to what we learned last time?" After the session, Victoria had the chef prepare lunch. Marcus stared at the elaborate meal with poorly concealed hunger, but waited until everyone else began eating before carefully picking up his fork. "This is really good," he said quietly after his first bite. "Thank you." "You're welcome here any time," Marcus, Victoria said gently. "For tutoring or just for meals?" He nodded but said nothing, his expression guarded. Victoria could read the suspicion. Clearly her kindness wasn't trusted because he expected it to be temporary. The pattern continued for 2 weeks. Marcus would arrive, punctually teach Lily with remarkable skill, accept a meal, and then insist on leaving despite Victoria's invitations to stay longer. One evening, a security alert pinged on Victoria's phone. The perimeter cameras had detected movement near the service entrance. Checking the footage, she was surprised to see Marcus huddled in the sheltered doorway of the gardening shed as rain poured down. She grabbed an umbrella and headed out immediately. "Marcus," she called softly. He startled, jumping to his feet. "I'm sorry, Miss Blackwood. I wasn't trying to break in." "It's just the storm. It's all right," she assured him quickly. "Come inside, please. You're soaking wet." He hesitated, then nodded, following her to the main house. Once inside, Victoria had the housekeeper bring warm clothes and towels. "Where are you staying currently?" she asked as he dried off. Marcus looked away. "There's an old car behind the recycling center. The back seat is pretty comfortable." Victoria felt physically ill imagining this child sleeping in an abandoned vehicle. "The storm is supposed to last for days, Marcus. Please stay in our guest house tonight." He started to refuse, but thunder cracked loudly, making his decision easier. Just until the storm passes, he agreed reluctantly. The guest house was a modest 2-bedroom cottage on the estate grounds that Victoria used for visiting executives. Marcus walked through it with wide eyes, running his fingers gently over the books on the shelf, looking out at the rain from the safety of solid walls. "Thank you," he said simply. The temporary arrangement revealed new layers of complexity in Victoria's household. Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper, embraced Marcus's presence wholeheartedly, fixing his favorite foods and mending his clothes. Frank, the security chief, remained coldly professional, but kept unnecessarily close watch whenever Marcus was near the main house. Lily's excitement at having her friend nearby was tempered by her growing awareness of the differences in their circumstances. "Why can't Marcus live here all the time?" she asked Victoria one night. "He's all alone, Mommy." Victoria had no easy answer. The next day, Caroline came by for their monthly lunch date and was visibly startled to see Marcus reading on the patio. "Is that the homeless child your security team mentioned?" she whispered to Victoria. "What is he doing here?" Victoria explained the tutoring arrangement while they watched Lily and Marcus work through a complex math problem together. "Lily's grades have improved dramatically," Victoria pointed out. "And he's a remarkable child. Self-taught, brilliant at mathematics." Caroline's smile was tight. "I understand wanting to help Victoria, but you need to consider how this looks. People are already talking." "Let them talk," Victoria replied sharply. "That child deserves support, not gossip." Caroline lowered her voice further. "There are organizations for children like him, proper channels. Having him stay here in your home, people will misunderstand your intentions." Victoria felt a surge of anger. "What exactly are they misunderstanding, Caroline?" "My belief that a brilliant black child deserves the same opportunities my daughter takes for granted." Caroline flinched at the directness. "You know that's not what I meant. I'm just concerned about you." Since Jonathan died, you've been different. More impulsive, more aware, Victoria corrected. And I'm not concerned with appearances anymore. After Caroline left, Victoria found herself seeing her home through new eyes. The extravagance, the excess, the isolation from the realities that shaped lives like Marcus's. She thought of the abandoned car he called home, the public bathrooms, where he washed the library security that followed him while he taught himself mathematics beyond his years. When Marcus arrived for his tutoring session the next day, Victoria suggested having him evaluated by an educational specialist she knew. Why, Marcus asked suspiciously. So I can better understand how to support your education, Victoria explained. You're clearly working far beyond grade level in mathematics. Marcus considered this, then nodded cautiously. Okay, but I can still teach Lily right. The results of the assessment stunned even Victoria. Marcus tested at a high school level in mathematics and science, with extraordinary spatial reasoning and problem-solving abilities. In 20 years of educational assessment, I've never seen mathematical intuition like this in a child his age, Dr. Rivera told Victoria privately. With proper support and education, his potential is limitless. That evening, Victoria found Marcus sitting on the guest house steps staring at the stars. She joined him quietly. When I was little, my mom told me I could be a scientist, he said suddenly without looking at her. I still remember the books she got me from the library about space and numbers. After she died, one of my foster parents told me to stop dreaming so big, said nobody would ever give someone like me those chances. He turned to Victoria, his eyes full of a wisdom no child should possess. He was right, wasn't he? About how the world works for people like me. Victoria felt the weight of his question, the brutal honesty of a child who had already learned too much about systemic inequality. Many people would try to make his words come true, she admitted. But they're wrong, Marcus, and I'm going to help you prove it if you'll let me. Victoria had just finished reviewing quarterly reports when her phone exploded with notifications. Opening her news alerts, she felt her stomach drop. There on the screen was a grainy photo of Marcus entering her car with the headline, "Tech Billionaire's Mystery Child Charity Case," or PR stunt. The article speculated wildly about Victoria's motives for taking in a homeless boy, with anonymous sources questioning whether it was a calculated move to soften her company's image after recent criticism of their role in gentrification. Victoria immediately called her PR team, but the damage was spreading rapidly. By evening, social media was flooded with opinions, many attacking Victoria for exploiting Marcus, others making thinly veiled racist comments about her allowing him near her daughter. Worst were the sugary commendations praising her white savior charity work. Marcus, who had begun to relax slightly in the guest house, retreated back into guarded silence after seeing the headlines on a staff member's phone. I should leave, he told Victoria that evening. I'm causing trouble for you. Victoria shook her head firmly. You're not causing anything, Marcus. The problem is with them, not you. But the situation deteriorated further when Lily came home from school in tears the next day. A classmate had shown her a tabloid article on their phone with the headline, "Blackwood Heiress Forced to Befriend Homeless Charity Project." They said awful things about Marcus' mom. Lily sobbed. They said, "You're only helping him to look good in the news." That's not true, is it? Victoria held her daughter close. No, sweetheart. We're helping Marcus because it's the right thing to do and because he's an extraordinary person who deserves a chance. The next morning, Victoria received an urgent call from her COO. The company's stock had dropped 7 points overnight, and major shareholders were expressing concerns about her judgment. The board is calling an emergency meeting, Victoria, he warned. Fisher is leading the charge. They're questioning your focus and priorities. Victoria attended the meeting virtually, listening as board members couched their racism in terms of brand risk and public perception. Harold Fisher spoke last, his tone patronizing. Victoria, we all understand. You're trying to do a good thing here. Your charitable impulses are admirable. But this public spectacle is damaging shareholder value. The optics of you personally adopting a homeless child— I haven't adopted anyone, Victoria interrupted coldly. I'm simply providing temporary housing and educational support to a mathematically gifted child who has been failed by every system meant to protect him. Whatever you want to call it, Fisher continued. It's becoming a distraction. The board strongly suggests you handle this more discreetly. Perhaps fund a scholarship at a boarding school somewhere appropriate for his background. Victoria ended the call without responding, fury building inside her. That weekend, she hosted a small company gathering at her home, something she'd planned weeks earlier. She had invited Marcus to join them, hoping to introduce him to some of her more open-minded colleagues who might serve as mentors. The evening seemed to be going well until Victoria overheard two executives speaking in low voices near the bar. "You have to admit it's strange," one murmured. "Taking in some random street kid. There must be something else going on." "Probably guilt," the other replied. "Her company displaced half the affordable housing in that neighborhood. This is cheaper than actual reparations." Victoria froze, watching as Marcus, who had been approaching with a question about the mathematics book she'd given him, overheard the exchange. His face shuddered instantly, all the careful trust she'd built crumbling in seconds. Before she could reach him, he turned and walked quickly away. Victoria searched the entire property, finally finding him, gathering his few belongings in the guest house. "Marcus, please," she said from the doorway. "Don't leave." What they said was cruel and wrong. But was it untrue? He asked, his voice steady despite the hurt in his eyes. "Is that why you're helping me, Guilt?" The question cut Victoria deeply because there was a grain of truth in it. Learning about her company's role in housing displacement had indeed intensified her determination to help. "That's part of it," she admitted honestly. "Learning how my company affected communities like yours made me see things I'd been ignoring. But Marcus, that's not why I want you here. I want you here because you're brilliant and kind, and you deserve every opportunity to become whoever you want to be." He studied her face, searching for deception. "People like you don't usually help people like me without wanting something back. I'm learning to be better than people like me," Victoria said quietly. Marcus considered this, then slowly put his backpack down. "I'll stay tonight, but I need to think." The media storm intensified over the next week. Conservative pundits questioned Victoria's agenda in taking in a black child. Liberal commentators praised her brave charity work in condescending terms that stripped Marcus of his agency and humanity. The comment sections filled with racist vitriol that made Victoria physically ill. Victoria's board threatened more directly this time. Either end the disruptive situation with Marcus or face a vote to remove her as CEO. Through it all, Marcus watched silently, his young face increasingly burdened by adult concerns. When Victoria's former friend Diane canceled their daughter's playdate with a thinly veiled excuse about safety concerns, Victoria had enough. She called a press conference against every recommendation from her PR team. Standing before the cameras, Victoria spoke directly and honestly. "I want to address the speculation about Marcus, the brilliant young mathematician who is currently staying in my guest house. First, this child deserves privacy and respect, neither of which has been afforded to him by the media. Second, the racist undertones in much of the coverage disgust me. Would there be this level of scrutiny if he were a white child? The answer is obviously no." She paused, gathering herself. "Marcus is not a charity case or a PR stunt. He is an extraordinarily gifted child who has been failed by systems that were designed to protect children like my daughter while overlooking children like him. My family's connection with him began because he was generously teaching my daughter mathematics, not the other way around. The question shouldn't be why I'm helping one child, but why our society is structured to waste the potential of countless others like him." The speech polarized opinion even further. While many applauded Victoria's honesty, others doubled down on their criticism. Her mother called horrified. "Victoria, what were you thinking? You've made yourself a target. The Prescotts have already removed you from the charity gala committee, and Caroline says you've become radicalized. Is this boy really worth destroying everything you've built?" Victoria found Marcus watching a recording of her press conference on a tablet, his expression unreadable. "Did you mean it?" he asked as she sat beside him. "Everything you said about me," Victoria nodded. "Every word." For the first time since the media storm began, Marcus smiled. A small, cautious thing, but genuine. "No one's ever stood up for me before." That night, Victoria received an email from a major investor threatening to pull their funding entirely. The subject line read simply, Choose your company or your charity project. She closed her laptop, the decision already made in her heart. Victoria sat across from her lawyer, Janet Chen, in the study of her home, the morning light filtering through the windows, as they discussed the possibility of legally adopting Marcus. "It won't be easy," Janet warned, organizing the stack of documents before her. "Interracial adoptions face extra scrutiny, and high-profile cases like this attract additional complications. The media attention has already created a difficult environment." Victoria nodded, determination hardening her resolve. "I understand the challenges, but Marcus deserves stability. He's been living in my guest house for nearly 3 months now, and he's thriving. His educational assessments are off the charts. He needs a permanent home where he can reach his full potential." Janet nodded, making notes. "Have you discussed this with Marcus? At his age, his consent will be a significant factor. We've talked about it. He's cautiously open to the idea, though I think he's afraid to fully believe it might happen." The process began with a formal press announcement, which created exactly the media frenzy Janet had predicted. Conservative outlets immediately questioned Victoria's motives, with headlines suggesting she was purchasing diversity credentials or engaging in performative white liberal adoption. The business press framed it as a strategic move to repair Black Tech's reputation after recent controversies. Almost none focused on Marcus as an individual with agency and extraordinary gifts. The corporate backlash was swift and severe. Victoria's board called an emergency session with Fisher leading the charge. "This has gone beyond a personal charity project into a full-scale PR disaster," he argued. "Victoria is allowing her emotional response to this boy to cloud her business judgment. We move to temporarily relieve her of CEO duties until this situation is resolved." The vote was 5-4 in favor of suspension, with Victoria's remaining authority resting on her majority shareholding. That afternoon, she received a call from the social worker assigned to Marcus's case, a tight-voiced woman named Mrs. Reeves. "Miss Blackwood, I need to schedule our first home assessment. I should warn you that this case has attracted unusual attention from my superiors. The process will be rigorous." The warning in her tone was clear. Victoria's wealth and influence wouldn't make this easy. During their first meeting, Mrs. Reeves's bias became apparent. "While your financial resources are obviously adequate," she said, looking around the expansive living room, "we must consider cultural factors. Children typically thrive best with families that share their cultural background and can properly address their heritage needs." Victoria maintained her composure with difficulty. "I'm committed to ensuring Marcus maintains connections to his cultural identity. I've already arranged for mentorship programs with Black mathematicians and scientists, and I'm working with cultural consultants to educate myself." Mrs. Reeves made a non-committal note. "Nevertheless, there are many loving Black families waiting to adopt. Perhaps Marcus would be better placed with people like him." The thinly veiled racism ignited Victoria's anger, but she kept her voice steady. "With all due respect, Mrs. Reeves, Marcus has been failed by the system for 4 years. He was sleeping in an abandoned car when I found him. Where were these families then? And more importantly, what does Marcus want?" The battle intensified. When Victoria's lawyer discovered that Mrs. Reeves had documented concerns about the child's attachment capabilities, despite Marcus's obvious bonding with both Victoria and Lily. "She's building a case against you," Janet warned. "And she has supervisors supporting her. Someone wants this adoption to fail." The situation grew more complicated when Victoria's mother arrived unannounced at the estate, having seen the adoption announcement on the news. "Victoria, you can't be serious about this," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Temporary charity is one thing, but legally making this child a Blackwood. Have you considered what this will do to our family name, to Lily's future mother? I'd like you to meet Marcus. Before you say anything else, you'll faft. Regret." Victoria said coldly, nodding toward the doorway where Marcus stood frozen, having overheard everything. The color drained from Catherine Blackwood's face as she realized her mistake. Marcus stepped forward with dignity beyond his years, extending his hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Blackwood. I've heard a lot about you." Catherine took his hand automatically, her social training overriding her prejudice momentarily. "Well, you have lovely manners," she managed, clearly surprised. Lily says you're teaching her mathematics. Marcus nodded. She's very quick with numbers. We're working on pre-algebra now. The interaction was brief and strained, but as Marcus excused himself, Catherine turned to Victoria with confusion. He's not what I expected. That's the problem, Mother. Your expectations were based on prejudices, not reality. Catherine left without committing to supporting the adoption, but she didn't openly oppose it either, a small victory in Victoria's eyes. The psychological evaluation required for the adoption process brought new hurdles. The psychologist Dr. Harris asked Marcus pointed questions that seemed designed to provoke negative responses. How does it feel knowing Victoria might be using you to improve her company's image? Do you think you deserve to live in a home like this when so many other children don't have this opportunity? Are you concerned about losing your cultural identity in a white household? Marcus handled the questions with remarkable poise. But later that night, Victoria found him sitting alone in the garden, tears streaming silently down his face. Marcus, what's wrong? He looked up quickly, wiping his eyes. What if they're right? What if I don't belong here? What if you change your mind later? Victoria sat beside him, careful to give him space. I won't change my mind, Marcus. You belong wherever you choose to belong, and I'm choosing to be your family if you'll have me. He nodded, unable to speak, and for the first time he initiated a hug, clinging to Victoria as though afraid she might disappear. The legal obstacles multiplied. Janet discovered that certain documents in Marcus's file had been mysteriously misplaced. The judge initially assigned to their case was known for opposing interracial adoptions. Anonymous complaints about Marcus's presence in the neighborhood were filed with local authorities. Someone is pulling strings against us, Janet concluded after another setback. This goes beyond normal bureaucratic resistance. Victoria used her investigative team to trace the interference, eventually connecting it to a board member at her company who had ties to the state's Family Services Department. The corruption infuriated her, strengthening her resolve. We fight this publicly, she decided. We expose every irregularity, every biased decision, every conflict of interest. Meanwhile, Lily was fighting battles of her own at school. Victoria was called to the principal's office after Lily got into an altercation with an older student who had made racist comments about Marcus. While we understand, Lily was defending her. Friend, the principal said carefully, we have a zero-tolerance policy on physical confrontation. Victoria looked at her daughter's defiant expression. What exactly did the other child say? The principal shifted uncomfortably. That's not relevant to the discipline issue at hand. It's entirely relevant, Victoria insisted. My daughter was standing up against racism. Will the other child face consequences for hate speech? The question exposed the school's double standard. They had policies against violence but seemed unwilling to enforce policies against racism with equal vigor. That evening, Victoria found Marcus helping Lily with homework despite his own troubles. You shouldn't get in fights because of me, he told her seriously. It just makes things worse. Lily frowned. But Tyler said you were only living with us because Mom felt sorry for you. That's a lie. You're family now. Marcus glanced at Victoria, who had paused in the doorway. Am I? He asked quietly. Family. Victoria nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Yes, Marcus, if that's what you want. For the first time since she'd met him, Marcus allowed himself to look truly hopeful. I do want that, he whispered. The obstacles continued mounting, each one more frustrating than the last. When a promising breakthrough with a sympathetic judge fell through, Victoria found Marcus sitting on his bed, backpack packed. I keep causing problems for you and Lily, he said, not meeting her eyes. Maybe it would be better if I just left. Everyone at your company hates me. Your friends stopped visiting. Even your mom doesn't approve. Victoria sat beside him, gentle but firm. Marcus, look at me. Do you know what my husband said before he died? He told me to stop living for other people's approval. It took me losing him, then meeting you, to understand what he meant. I don't care what the board thinks, or my so-called friends, or even my mother. I care about doing what's right. And you are worth fighting for. The conviction in her voice finally reached him. Slowly he unpacked his bag. 2 days later, Victoria received word that the judge had been replaced due to a conflict of interest. Janet's careful documenting of irregularities was finally bearing fruit. The new judge had a reputation for fairness and following proper procedure. For the first time, Victoria allowed herself to believe they might succeed. Do you believe the systems meant to protect children treat all kids equally regardless of race? Type 1 in the comments if you think our institutions need serious reform. Like this video if you believe love and determination can overcome even the most entrenched prejudice. Subscribe to see if Victoria and Marcus can beat the system that's stacked against them. The legal battle is reaching its climax, but the biggest challenges may still lie ahead. Will Victoria's privilege be enough to overcome systemic racism, or will she lose everything in her fight for justice? What sacrifices would you make to stand up for what's right? Victoria jolted awake to the sound of breaking glass downstairs. Grabbing her phone to call security, she rushed to check on Lily first, finding her daughter safe, but frightened in her bedroom. "Stay here and lock the door," Victoria instructed, her heart pounding, as she hurried to Marcus's room next. He wasn't there. Panic rising, Victoria raced downstairs to find Frank, her security chief, already investigating. The living room window had been shattered, a brick lying among the glass shards. Attached to the brick was a note with a crude message, "Keep to your own kind." Marcus Victoria called out, frantically checking each room. They found him huddled in the pantry, shaking but physically unharmed. "I heard the crash," he whispered. "I thought they were coming for me." The incident marked the beginning of an escalating campaign of intimidation. The next morning, Victoria discovered spray-painted slurs on her garden wall. Anonymous threatening calls flooded her office line. Her home address was posted on extremist message boards with calls for peaceful protests that were clearly anything but peaceful. The police response was tepid at best. Without specific threats or evidence linking these incidents to particular individuals, there's little we can do, the officer explained with practiced neutrality. Victoria noticed he spent more time questioning Marcus about his presence in her home than investigating the vandalism. After the officer left, Victoria installed additional security measures: cameras, motion sensors, a direct line to a private security firm. She considered moving to a more secure location, but worried that retreating would only embolden the harassers. The situation worsened when Marcus was attacked while walking home from the library with a tutor Victoria had hired. 3 teenage boys surrounded them, shoving Marcus to the ground and shouting racial slurs before running off when adults approached. Marcus suffered only minor bruises, but the psychological impact was severe. "This is because of me," Victoria overheard him telling Lily that evening. "Bad things happen to people who try to help me." The next day, Victoria received the call she had been dreading. The board had convened a special shareholder meeting to vote on her removal as CEO. "I'm sorry, Victoria," her COO said, genuine regret in his voice. "Fisher has been lobbying major shareholders for weeks. He's convinced them your personal crusade is damaging the company." Victoria was unsurprised, but still felt the sting of betrayal. "And where do you stand, Michael?" His hesitation told her everything. "I have a family to think about, Victoria. This has become bigger than just a homeless kid. It's turned political." Later that afternoon, Victoria discovered something that turned her cold fury into white-hot rage. Her mother's name was on the list of shareholders supporting her removal. Catherine Blackwood owned 7% of Black Tech shares, a wedding gift from Victoria's father, a gift she was now using against her own daughter. Victoria confronted her mother by phone. "How could you?" Your own daughter Catherine sighed heavily. "Victoria, this obsession with adopting this boy has consumed you. You're losing your company, your social standing, putting Lily in danger, all for what? To prove some point about racism, to assuage your liberal guilt. I'm trying to save you from yourself." Victoria hung up without responding, the final fracture of their relationship too painful to acknowledge. The strain began affecting Lily as well. Her teacher called to report that Lily had become withdrawn and anxious at school. "She had a panic attack when someone slammed a door loudly," the teacher explained. "And she's been having nightmares." "Has there been unusual stress at home that night?" Victoria found Marcus sitting on the edge of Lily's bed, reading her a story as she fell asleep. He looked up as Victoria entered, his expression resigned. "I should leave," he said quietly once they were in the hallway. "Lily's having bad dreams because of me. Everything was fine for you before I came." Victoria knelt to his level, meeting his eyes directly. "Marcus, listen to me carefully. None of this is your fault. The people doing these things, the people supporting them, they are the problem, not you. Never you." His eyes filled with tears. "But if I go back to the streets, you can have your normal life again. Your company, your friends, your mom. Lily would be safe." The selflessness of this child willing to return to homelessness to protect them broke something in Victoria. She pulled him gently into a hug. "You are not a problem to be solved, Marcus. You are a brilliant, kind, extraordinary person who deserves a family and a future. We are going to get through this together." The shareholder meeting was scheduled for Monday. Over the weekend, Victoria learned that her company's stock had fallen 20% since the adoption announcement. Major clients were threatening to withdraw contracts. Her personal fortune, while still substantial, had diminished significantly with the company's declining value. More disturbingly, the prestigious private school had rejected Marcus's application despite his exceptional test scores. The headmaster had been apologetically transparent. The Board of Trustees feels that given the current publicity, Marcus's presence might be disruptive to the learning environment. On Sunday evening, as Victoria prepared her statement for the shareholder meeting, she received a call from Janet. "The judge is delaying his decision on the adoption again," she reported grimly. "There's clearly external pressure being applied." Victoria thanked her and hung up, staring out at the garden where both children were playing. The security team patrolled the perimeter, a constant reminder of the threats they faced. For a brief, shameful moment, Victoria considered giving up. It would be easier to surrender, to place Marcus with another family, to retreat to her privileged bubble and convince herself she had done all she could. The thought had barely formed when she saw Marcus teaching Lily how to solve a math puzzle, his patience and natural teaching ability shining through despite everything. She watched as Lily hugged him impulsively when she got the right answer, and how his initial stiffness melted into genuine affection as he hugged her back. The sight crystallized Victoria's resolve. She would not surrender to hatred and prejudice. She would not teach Lily that comfort and convenience outweighed justice. She would not show Marcus that the world was right about people like her, that their support was conditional, their allyship fragile. Victoria spent the night rewriting her statement for the shareholder meeting, but with an entirely different purpose than she had originally intended. By morning, her path was clear. When she gathered Marcus and Lily for breakfast, both children immediately sensed the shift in her energy. "Something's different," Marcus observed cautiously. "You seem lighter." Victoria smiled, serving them pancakes she had made herself rather than relying on the chef. "Today we're going to make some big changes," she explained. "Good ones, I think. But I wanted to ask you both first, especially you, Marcus. How would you feel about moving to a new house? Somewhere smaller, in a different neighborhood?" Marcus studied her carefully. "Because of the bad people," partly Victoria admitted. "But also because I think we've been living in a bubble here. A beautiful bubble, but one that keeps us separate from the real world and most real people." Marcus considered this, then nodded slowly. "I think that might be good." Lily frowned. "Will I still have my own room?" Victoria laughed, the sound genuine for the first time in weeks. "Yes, sweetheart, just a different one." As she drove to the shareholder meeting, Victoria felt a surprising sense of peace. The decision she was about to announce would shock the business world, disappoint her mother permanently, and dramatically change their lives. But for the first time since Jonathan's death, she felt completely certain she was doing the right thing. The boardroom fell silent as Victoria entered. Fisher looked triumphant, already rehearsing his victory speech as the new CEO in his mind. Victoria took her place at the head of the table, opened her folder, and changed everything. The business press called it the most expensive moral stand in corporate history. Within 24 hours of the shareholder meeting, Victoria Blackwood had voluntarily resigned, as CEO sold 70% of her Black Tech shares at a significant discount to maintain voting control of the company's ethical initiatives, and announced the launch of the Equation Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to identifying and supporting mathematically gifted children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Victoria had walked into the boardroom facing almost certain removal and instead had seized control of the narrative completely. "I will not lead a company whose values conflict so fundamentally with my own," she told the stunned board members. "Nor will I allow BlackTech to abandon its commitments to community investment and educational outreach. I am exercising my voting rights as majority shareholder to replace 3 board members effective immediately with individuals committed to ethical business practices and genuine diversity initiatives." Fisher had turned purple with rage. "You can't do this. The shareholders will sue." Victoria had smiled coolly. "I've consulted extensively with legal counsel. I suggest you do the same before making threats." Though her personal fortune decreased by over $2 billion with the stock sale, Victoria retained more than enough to secure her family's future while funding her new foundation. The morning after the shareholder meeting, Victoria took Marcus and Lily to see their new home. A modern 4-bedroom house in a diverse middle-class neighborhood near an excellent public school known for its math and science programs. "It's smaller," Lily observed as they toured the rooms, "but I like the tree in the backyard." Marcus said little during the tour, running his hand along the walls, looking out windows, opening and closing doors, as if testing their solidity. Finally, in what would be his bedroom, the first real bedroom he'd had in years, he turned to Victoria. "Is this really happening?" "For real." Victoria nodded. "For real. We move next week." His careful composure cracked, and for the first time Marcus cried openly, years of suppressed emotion finally finding release. Victoria held him, her own tears falling, while Lily wrapped her arms around them both. The media's reaction to Victoria's corporate departure and adoption battle varied wildly. Conservative outlets portrayed her as a radical who had sacrificed shareholder value on the altar of woke politics. Liberal publications celebrated her as a hero, while often missing the point that Marcus was a child, not a symbol. What surprised Victoria most was the gradual shift in some unexpected quarters. Former critics began questioning their initial reactions. Thoughtful pieces about systemic barriers in education and adoption appeared in mainstream publications. Several of Victoria's former executive team members reached out privately to express support, though few did so publicly. 2 weeks after moving into their new home, Victoria received an unexpected visitor, Walter the veteran from the homeless encampment where she had first searched for Marcus. "Heard you were in the neighborhood now," he said, standing on her porch with a potted plant. "Housewarming gift. Nothing fancy, just grows good with a little care." Victoria invited him in for coffee, and Marcus's face lit up when he recognized his old friend. "You found us," Walter chuckled. "Wasn't hard. You're famous now, little professor." As they talked, Walter mentioned that several other people from the encampment had been asking about Marcus. "They're proud of you, boy. Say you're showing what's possible when someone gets a real chance." The conversation gave Victoria an idea. With Walter's help, she began connecting with more people from Marcus's former community, listening to their stories and needs rather than imposing her assumptions. This grassroots approach informed the development of her foundation, ensuring it addressed real barriers rather than theoretical ones. The adoption process continued facing obstacles, but the publicity surrounding Victoria's corporate sacrifice had made it harder for officials to block the case without clear justification. Janet reported that the new judge was proceeding carefully but fairly. He's requesting additional home visits and extended interviews with Marcus, but these are standard procedures, not targeted harassment. Marcus, who had been reluctant to fully believe in the possibility of permanent adoption, began gradually accepting that Victoria wouldn't abandon him. The first sign was when he asked if he could paint his bedroom. "What colors were you thinking?" Victoria asked. He hesitated, then said blue and yellow, like the sky and Sunday, but only if it's okay. "It's more than okay," Victoria assured him. "It's your room, Marcus." The simple exchange represented enormous progress. He was allowing himself to imagine a future, to personalize a space, to believe he belonged. Lily adapted to their new life with surprising ease. After initial complaints about missing her old toys, most of which Victoria had donated at Lily's reluctant agreement, she thrived at her new school. When a classmate made a comment about Lily's family being weird, Lily reportedly responded, "My family is awesome. My brother is a math genius, and my mom fights for justice." Her proud recounting of this exchange at dinner brought tears to Victoria's eyes. Victoria's mother maintained her distance for nearly 2 months before finally requesting a meeting. They met at a neutral restaurant, Catherine, looking uncomfortable in the casual setting Victoria had chosen. "You look different," Catherine observed. Victoria touched her hair recently, cut into a simpler style that required less maintenance. "I am different." They talked carefully around the central issues until Catherine finally sighed. "Victoria, I still don't understand why you had to blow up your entire life over this child. Couldn't you have helped him without the adoption, without leaving the company without?" She gestured vaguely. All this Victoria considered her mother thoughtfully. "Would you like to meet him properly? Not as a charity case or a cause, but as the child who might become your grandson." Catherine hesitated, then nodded stiffly. The following Sunday, Victoria invited her mother for dinner at their new home. Marcus, nervous but determined, had insisted on helping cook. He had revealed a surprising talent for baking, and had prepared a lemon cake for dessert. Throughout the evening, Catherine watched Marcus interact with Lily, noting their easy sibling dynamic and his extraordinary articulation when discussing the books he was reading. "He taught himself calculus," Catherine whispered to Victoria as they watched the children playing a board game. Victoria nodded. "Before he had consistent access to food or shelter." By the end of the visit, Catherine's rigid posture had softened slightly. When Marcus proudly served his cake, she complimented it genuinely. "You have a gift for this," she told him. "My late husband, Victoria's father, loved to bake too." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a beginning. The Equation Foundation launched officially 4 months after Victoria's departure from Black Tech. Its first initiative identified 50 mathematically gifted children from underprivileged backgrounds across the country, providing them with mentorship, technology, and educational resources. Marcus played a key role in designing the selection criteria and support systems, drawing on his own experiences to identify what would truly help. "Not just computers and books," he explained during a planning meeting. "They need people who believe in them, who won't give up when things get hard." His insight proved invaluable, and Victoria made sure he received proper credit for his contributions, while still protecting his privacy. As autumn turned to winter, their new life settled into comfortable rhythms. Victoria worked from home most days, running the foundation and serving as an advisor to several educational nonprofits. Marcus thrived in his new school, where the principal had recognized his abilities and created a flexible learning plan that allowed him to accelerate in mathematics while developing in other areas. Lily had made new friends and started a math club where Marcus sometimes guest-taught. Their house became a gathering place for neighborhood children, filling with noise and life in a way Victoria's mansion never had. One evening, as Victoria helped Marcus with his history homework, he looked up suddenly. "I never thanked you," he said, "for everything." Victoria smiled. "You don't need to thank family, Marcus." He nodded, considering this. "I used to think people like you only helped people like me if you wanted something back. I thought you'd get tired of all the problems and send me away." "And now?" Victoria asked gently. Marcus smiled, a full, unguarded expression that transformed his serious face. "Now, I think maybe there aren't people like you, and people like me. Just people trying to do better." Victoria hugged him, recognizing the profound wisdom in his words. "I think you might be the smartest person I know, Marcus Blackwood." On a bright spring morning, nearly 14 months after Marcus first taught Lily fractions by the pond, Victoria, Marcus and Lily stood before Judge Michaels in the family court. The room was intimate, with only Janet Walter, and to everyone's surprise, Catherine Blackwood in attendance. Having reviewed all relevant documents and testimony, the judge announced, "I find the petition for adoption to be in the best interest of the child. Marcus James Williams is hereby legally adopted by Victoria Ann Blackwood, and shall henceforth be known as Marcus James Blackwood." He smiled at the family. "Congratulations." Marcus stood frozen, as if afraid to believe the words he'd just heard. Lily broke the spell by throwing her arms around him. "It's official. You're really my brother now." Victoria knelt to embrace them, both tears streaming down her face. "We're a family, forever." Marcus nodded, his own eyes wet. Forever, he echoed, testing the word that had never before been part of his vocabulary. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd of supporters had gathered. Children and parents from Marcus's school staff from the Equation Foundation. Even a few families from the homeless encampment Victoria had first visited over a year ago. They cheered as the family emerged, Marcus shyly waving as cameras flashed. In the months that followed, life settled into new patterns. The Equation Foundation expanded rapidly, partnering with universities to develop specialized programs for mathematically gifted children from disadvantaged backgrounds. 5 schools across the country adopted curriculum models based on Marcus's learning style, emphasizing conceptual understanding over rote memorization. Victoria received an unexpected call from Michael, her former COO. "The diversity initiatives you forced through before leaving," he said without preamble. "They're working. Employee retention is up 20%, and we've discovered talent we would have overlooked before. Fisher still complains, but the numbers speak for themselves." Victoria smiled. "I'm glad to hear it. Sometimes doing the right thing is also the smart thing." One rainy afternoon, Victoria found Catherine and Marcus sitting at the kitchen table, heads bent together over a book of old family recipes. "Grandma's teaching me how to make her famous chocolate cake," Marcus explained, the word "grandma" still new and tentative on his tongue. Catherine met Victoria's surprised gaze with a small shrug. "The boy has a natural talent for baking. It would be a shame not to nurture it." It was as close to an explicit acceptance as Catherine would likely ever come, but the sight of her voluntarily spending time with Marcus spoke volumes. Perhaps the most unexpected development came 6 months after the adoption, when Marcus's mathematics teacher entered one of his theoretical papers in a national competition. Not only did he win first place, but his proof caught the attention of Dr. Elijah Washington, a prominent black mathematician at MIT. "This work shows extraordinary intuition," Dr. Washington told Victoria after arranging to meet Marcus. "With proper guidance, he could make significant contributions to the field." The meeting transformed into a mentorship, with Dr. Washington video conferencing with Marcus weekly. During one session, Dr. Washington mentioned something that sent Victoria researching deep into the night. "Marcus's approach to topological problems reminds me of James Williams's work in the 70s. Williams was brilliant, but never received the recognition he deserved due to the racial climate in mathematics at the time." The name triggered Victoria's memory. Williams was Marcus's biological father's surname. After extensive research, she confirmed her suspicion Marcus's father had been related to James Williams, a mathematical prodigy whose career had been stymied by institutional racism. The discovery added poignant context to Marcus's natural abilities and the systemic failures that had nearly buried another generation of genius. On the anniversary of their first meeting by the pond, Victoria organized a small celebration at home. As they shared a meal in their backyard, she marveled at the changes a year had brought. Marcus, no longer painfully thin and guarded, laughed openly as he helped Lily set up a science experiment. He had grown taller, his shoulders straighter, his smile easier. Victoria caught him watching her across the table. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "The day you found me teaching Lily," he replied. "How scared I was when you appeared. I thought you'd call the police." Victoria nodded, remembering her own confusion and initial hesitation. And now Marcus gestured around them, at the modest home filled with books and science projects at Lily, concentrating on her experiment at the family photos covering the refrigerator that now included him. "Now I know what home feels like." Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Victoria sat on the porch swing, reflecting on their journey. Her phone buzzed with news alerts. The Equation Foundation's latest initiative had received major funding, and an educational reform bill she had advocated for had passed the state legislature. Her personal fortune was significantly reduced from its peak, but the foundation was thriving, and more importantly, her family was whole. She thought of the woman she had been before meeting Marcus. wealthy, privileged, and fundamentally disconnected from the realities shaping lives just miles from her gated estate. That woman had believed herself compassionate while remaining comfortably insulated from the systems she unknowingly perpetuated. Meeting Marcus had shattered that insulation, forcing her to see the world as it actually was. Unequal, often unjust, but capable of transformation through determined action and genuine connection. The following week, Marcus was invited to address a graduation ceremony at a school partnering with the Equation Foundation. Victoria and Lily sat proudly in the audience as he approached the podium, nervous but composed. 2 years ago, I was homeless, sleeping in abandoned cars, and teaching myself math from discarded library books, he began. Today, I stand here as Marcus Blackwood with a family, a future, and a message for anyone who has ever been overlooked or underestimated because of who they are or where they come from. He paused, scanning the audience. Your circumstances don't define your potential. Your zip code doesn't determine your worth. And sometimes the people society ignores have the most important things to say. As applause filled the auditorium, Victoria noticed something remarkable. Catherine Blackwood, sitting ramrod straight in her designer suit, wiping a tear from her eye as she watched her grandson inspire a room full of strangers. That night, as Victoria tucked Marcus in, a ritual he claimed to be too old for but secretly still enjoyed, he asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mom?" The word still sent a wave of emotion through her every time he used it. "Yes. Do you think if more people with privilege and power actually got to know people without those things, the world would be different?" Victoria considered the profound nature of his question. "I think it would be transformative," she answered honestly. Systemic change requires policy reform, but real understanding requires relationship, seeing people as individuals, not statistics or stereotypes. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I want to work on when I grow up. Not just mathematics, but building bridges between different worlds, like you did for me." Victoria kissed his forehead, humbled by his vision and the mathematical precision with which he had identified the exact equation needed to solve society's most persistent problems. As she turned out his light, she noticed the framed photograph on his bedside table, Marcus and Lily sitting by the pond, where they had first met, heads bent together over a math book, both laughing. Next to it stood a small framed certificate declaring Marcus James Blackwood the newest member of their family. Different worlds connected through love, respect, and recognition of each other's humanity. It was, Victoria realized, the most elegant solution of all. What would you do if you encountered someone with extraordinary potential being overlooked because of circumstances beyond their control? Has this story changed how you think about privilege and responsibility? Leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts. If this journey of transformation and justice touched your heart, please like and subscribe to support more stories that challenge us to see beyond our assumptions. Share this video with someone who might be inspired to make a difference in their own community. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey from prejudice to understanding, from separation to family. Remember, sometimes the greatest changes begin with seeing one person, truly seeing them for who they really are. True change begins when we step outside our comfort zones and confront our biases. Victoria's journey from privileged CEO to compassionate adoptive mother shows how personal transformation can spark systemic change. By seeing Marcus as a brilliant individual rather than a charity case, Victoria discovered how wealth and privilege had insulated her from understanding systemic racism and inequality. The story reminds us that exceptional talent exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. Marcus's mathematical genius nearly went undiscovered because society's structures weren't designed to nurture children like him. His experience highlights how many brilliant minds we lose when systems fail children based on race or economic status. Victoria's choice to sacrifice wealth and status for justice demonstrates that meaningful allyship requires real sacrifice and commitment. Her transformation wasn't just about helping one child, but about recognizing her complicity in systems that harm marginalized communities. Most importantly, the story shows that connection across difference is powerful. When we truly see people as individuals rather than stereotypes, we break down barriers that keep us divided. Marcus taught Victoria as much as she helped him. Showing her the world from his perspective changed her fundamentally. True family isn't defined by blood or background, but by love, respect, and mutual recognition of each other's humanity. Sometimes the most beautiful equations are the ones that bring different worlds together. Has this story touched your heart? Take a moment to reflect on how you might use your own privilege to create opportunities for others. Have you ever witnessed talent being overlooked because of prejudice? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you believe every child deserves the chance to reach their full potential, regardless of race or circumstance, hit that like button to spread this message. Subscribe for more powerful stories that challenge us to see beyond surface differences and recognize the brilliance in everyone. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that one person can make a profound difference when they choose to stand against injustice. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey from prejudice to family. Remember, the world changes one relationship at a time.